Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the MarketingBox podcast. And today on our entrepreneur highlight of the day is a actual good friend of mine, David Bottner. Hey, man, how you doing, brother?
Good to be here, brother. It's been a long time we've been friends.
Yeah, a long time. So David, the reason David's here today, David is an old friend of mine from the automotive business. We were both in that business for a long time in New Orleans, and then we also had, competitive companies out there, and we've done a lot of business together. But 10 years ago, I remember this, I was talking to him and he said, hey, man, God put it on my heart to leave the business. Now, he's running a multi-million-dollar business at this time. And I get this call and I'm talking to him and he's like, I took, this position as the executive director of the mission. The mission is the homeless shelter. So David's the executive director of the mission. I think, you'll hear today the remarkable things that they've done, but he basically left this lucrative career to go do what Jesus put on his heart, man. And so I've always just admired you for that, man. I thought that's the epitome of sacrifice, right? And willing to understand you have a bigger purpose and mission. And I just, I think you have a great story. And today we want to unpack it, man, and let the world, let everybody know kind of how you got to this point, man.
Well, thank you for honoring me. I appreciate it. And we've known each other really from the beginning of even the mess that God had to rescue me out of. Yep. And I think it's the rescuing me out of that mess that for me, when God said, do it 10 years ago, it was way easier to say yes when you knew that you deserved hell. And that's been the reality of my life, is just growing up the way that I did, and the abuse and the sexual abuse and the physical abuse and all the trauma, and to have that control my life for so long, and then to meet God and for him to take away, almost like Paul, like instantaneous, all those controlling issues, and then turn it around for a ministry. Because even when we were in business, it's still like probably yours. The part of it was still a ministry. Like I was still hiring people that were on drugs, and we were in the car, and they was flooded with people that struggle with addictions and problems, and they're stealing cars, and so like God just was giving me a snapshot of what the future was to come, right? So it's amazing how God takes our whole journey in life. And shows us that it's all served a greater purpose. And of course, like you said, now I'm beginning to see it just more clearly in my own life, but not everybody sees it. It's coming for them,
I think that's interesting, man, because I never thought of that. But the car business, the characters in that business, and the stuff you deal with, dude, it's literally like almost living in an underworld almost, it's got a whole language, it's got a whole energy kind of. I think it's changed a little bit now, but when we were in the business, it was the rock'em sock'em, robots, man, no holes barred. And man, there was a lot of money there. So it attracted a lot of really, intelligent, strong, sales, persuasive people that also, that can be you can live by the sword and die by the sword. And they weren't able a lot of times. I remember, because I was in the middle of it as you were. Yeah. I was doing the shenanigans. Yes. And, it's almost like, when you get outside of it, it's like, man, you look back in and it's like, whoa, dude, like, man, I was out there, dude. Yeah. Like, man, everything, drugs,
what
women,
was I thinking?
Drinking, out late at night. Man, it was the whole culture, dude. This is what you did. You got off of work and you went and had a late dinner and you had some drinks, and who knows where you wound up from there, man.
Yes. And that's why even for today, it's like I tell this to people all the time. The only thing I miss about the business that I was in, the car business, is the money. That's the only thing that I miss about it. Everything else that revolved around it, it took my soul. Yeah. Because I thought you had to manipulate everything and everyone to get what you wanted.
Because it's the way the industry works. It's very vendor heavy. Every deal's a deal. Yeah. There's no credibility to anybody. Everything. So you developed kind of I've said the same thing when I stepped away from the car business and I started dealing with the rest of the world. I said, golly, man, I'm glad that I'm in like a normal environment now. Like when you tell someone, you have the benefit of them trusting you until you you do something wrong. Whereas, man, you start off below the ground in the car business, and it's the nature of it. So you're in this daily grind every single day, every deal. And so, man, it's really a grind, man. The guys that have been doing this for 30 and 40 years, man, my hat's off to them.
Everything's a negotiation.
Everything.
Everything. It's like, it reminds me of the scripture whenever I read it in Proverbs. It's like the buyer says it's no good and no good, and then he runs away happy. Right. Because he's like, I just told you it was no good to get a deal.
That's it.
And that was the world we lived in. It was just like, we're going to have to argue for everything. And again, so I miss the resources of it, especially now having 6 kids. It's like, man, that's how do you navigate life with 6 kids, but without having that income? And it's like trusting God. Like, how did I even get here? Because, Sean, the reality is, like, your young lady that we met, college education, God prepared her to come here work for you. Yep. The preparation that I received, no college education. No. I went to the school of hard knocks. Yep. And everything that I had to learn, I was going to learn. God was going to send me the hard way to get me to where I am today. And it's why it's like that scripture that comes to mind that I was telling somebody today. God takes the foolish things of the world, the things that are not, the things that are not noble, and he uses them to conform the wise. Like he's saying, I'm taking things because you will know that you're nothing and I'm everything, and you are where you are because of me. It's easy for a guy like me to just be that way. It's like, okay, yeah, it's true. Yeah. Because I'm a mess. Right. And he's still using me in ways that are unimaginable. It's like, and when people ask, like, how did this happen? It's God. Yeah. Like I can't even begin to take credit for it. It's that simple.
It's that simple, man. And that's why I think the story is so great. So the kids, the oldest one is little David, right?
My oldest, is 18. She's Mia. She's about to embark upon college. So you got your last one going to college, right?
No, I got Faith that's 13. So I have one.
You have one though that's Mia's age.
Yes.
Caleb,
yeah.
That's going into college.
He's in college. He's at South.
Oh, he already started?
Yeah, he started this year. Yeah.
Time flies. Yeah. So my oldest is 18. My son David is 16. My daughter Ayla is 9. My other daughter Annabelle is 5. And then I have a son, Jeremiah, who's 3.5. And then a newborn that's 9 months.
Dude, you got a basketball team plus a reserve, plus somebody on the bench.
I do, man.
Golly,
but
man.
Even in that, I'm a selfish man. I am. My kids have learned or have taught me how to not be as selfish. Like God had to do that. Even in my family, I'm like, God, 6 kids, you see what a terrible father I am. Like, why would you give me 6? And first of all, he's like, you're not a terrible father. I'm training you. But I did it because you're selfish. And it's just, everything in our lives is systematic for growth, like your business, everything. It's like, what I see some of your posts sometimes on Facebook, and I always can tell you're either going through it or you're coming out of it.
All the time.
And I see it by what you write.
Yeah. So that's when I feel like I'm in the spot I'm supposed to be.
I know, but it's like, so we know, but it's like, because God is using but we see that as God.
Yes.
Many people just think it's highs and lows of life. And because we see it for who it is, it gives us perspective, man, and an appreciation for even the struggle.
The struggle, listen, I heard somebody say this before, and it so rings true. The blessings are always in the lessons. That's so you begin to start to look for the lessons, man. So you're looking for failure. It means you're pushing hard. You're living the fullest you can be, man. And it used to be scary, but after so many times, as in your life, in my life, God has showed up at a time where it was impossible and it looked bleak and I didn't know what tomorrow looked like. And he showed up and it was so clear and evident and not a coincidence. And when it happens over and over and over again, you begin to look back at these things. Even, my little stint that I went away, man, like it all makes sense to me, man. I just had to get tuned in. I just had to get tuned into his word and get tuned into my spirit. And yeah, it's amazing, dude. Yeah.
I feel like when you were talking, the Lord specifically gave me something to share on, like a specific point, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So it was because I think it's probably for someone that's listening. Like for you and I, even when we got born again, money was still a God for us, right? Sure. It controlled a lot of my decisions. And because God was blessing us so much, like you guys had like 50-something sales, I remember. Like it was blowing up. That's a lot of cash that we had coming into our businesses in that time. And I thought everything that I was doing, God must have been pleased with because I'm so financially successful that everything around me must be good, because people that are failing, they must have sin. That was my thought.
Yeah.
That was my thought process. So anybody that had trouble must have sin, and I must be pleasing to God because he's blessing me, right? That was my theology. So then I embark on the car dealership in Baton Rouge, and I decide to buy a dealership.
Yep.
And then we hit the financial crisis in 2008. And I had made a decision that I was going to have all these businesses aside from the car business, and they were going to fund what I'm in now, which is the mission. But I was going to pay for it all through all those businesses. I was going to, because of my great success, right, that I was having. From 2008, Sean, to 2012, it was about 3.5 years that God took me through a storm where it cost me probably over $3 million. I got a letter from the IRS that said they wanted $9 million. I had the attorney generals in 22 states said they wanted $1.8 million. I had it was even Mitsubishi Motor Credit said they wanted $2.3 million. I remember getting the last letter from the IRS saying they wanted $9 million. And opening, and my wife came walking in the room, and I looked at her because she didn't know what was going on. I tried to deal with it all. Yep. And I said, honey, I don't even know whether to laugh right now or cry, because it's like it's all over, like at this piece of paper. And so I gave it to her. She's like, what does this mean? And I explained it to her. And it was at that moment, she went to bed that night, and I'm laying on the floor in my bathroom. My 2 kids at the time are in the other room. And I said, God, like, I'm doing all this stuff for you. And he said, I never told you to do any of it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I've been doing what I want to do. And I'm blaming you, God, for the mess I'm in right now. Yeah. Because I was so focused on the money, it wasn't about him, and it was about me. That day, I woke up, and it's like one of those things, son, you wake up the next day, and you're like, I want it to be, you're like, I was different, nothing had changed. All the problems were still there. The sky was blue, the grass was greener. It was like life was different. I didn't know what it was different, but I walked out all the fights and all the battles. I fasted for 21 days, didn't know what I was going to do, but God told me to shut the doors with the business and give it away. He said, you don't sell it, you give it away, and you walk away. That's what he told me to do. You don't look back. I did, and I was walking around Beauchene Golf Course one day, and I'm just, 21 days fasting. And literally, God says, I just want you to feed people. Just feed them, and don't ever question whether they're hungry. And that's a spiritual component, but it's also it meant a lot to me. So I remember in that moment, though, I said, like, God, why did I go through this? Because you thought I loved you because I gave to you. I love you whether I give to you or not. I love you. You're my son. And it was like all that I went through in that moment, in the next 10 days, the IRS, $4,000. Mitsubishi, give us the cars back. The attorney generals, $500, and don't do business in our states. God said, I was never trying to take it away from you, but it controlled you. Wow. And if I had to take it from you, because I didn't get your attention, then I would. See, anything that we depend upon besides him, he has to snatch it from us if we're his kids.
It's so true, man.
So I encourage like somebody out there, like why they're going through what they're going through, or they're on the brink of, they're not thinking it through. It's just making God the highest priority.
So listen, it's crazy because around the same time you were going through that stuff, 2007, 2008, I was going through the same thing, you know, and I remember I made a promise. I was saved on April 26, 2004 at the Ritz-Carlton at my sister's reception. And basically, you know, we were rolling, and, you know, back then we were, you know, I think we were going to do $40 million in business that year, but I was at war with my brothers. I had a lot of strife and discontent in my life, man. And I remember, I don't know why, because I was drinking, and I said, I see my brothers over there, and we're not even talking to each other. It's my sister's, you know, reception. And I said, God, if you give me the strength to go make peace with my brothers, then, you know, I promise you, nobody will ever know whether I'm rich or poor ever, you know, another day. Little did I know that he was going to take me through that to see if I was being honest. And, you know, so 2008, I'm sitting across the table. 2004, 2005, I'm making several $1 million a year in net profit. 2008, I'm sitting across the table from a bankruptcy attorney. I decide that we're not going to go through with it. The guy, we had already given him a deposit. I said, you can keep your deposit. The next day, we get a $75,000 check in from a piece of property that got sold that we took a loss on. And it was just like,
God wanted to show you.
Yeah. Brought me right to the brink, man. So
and I think that's the problem with being his son, but it's the good thing about being his son.
Yeah.
In other words, he's not going to just let us die in our mess, in our pit. But he's, again, I think when we started is like God using it all for his glory, right? Because it's part of even your ministry today. It's part of your ministry to your family. And as a businessman, being able to share that with other businessmen, that money is their God, because that's powerful right now, right? It's control. It's always been, but it's even more now, because if you have money like we did, from the outside we look like we had it all together, but our hearts were hardened and darkened because of it. The lie that if you had enough money, everything's going to be fine. Well, growing up poor, you thought that was true.
Sure.
But then once you had it all, it was like, okay, now what's enough for me? Because I remember, like, the Bible says, like, he had this much money, so then he was going to build bigger barns to store his grain and just sit back and relax. And in my mind, I had that number in my mind. I'm like, if I can get to $20 million, then that was my magic number. If I get there, then I can be settled. And right, but God's like, I ain't gonna let you get there, because if you get there, then you think you don't need me. Now that since has changed, right? Because I'm able to, like you, use what he gives you with way more wisdom, and it doesn't have control over me anymore.
Yeah, dude. It's almost like there's something that switches in your brain from money to saying, you know what, be in my purpose, doing it the way that God wants me to do it. And at the end, when people ask how, there's only one place to point, brother. And so that's kind of, don't sacrifice today for the future. Don't look at 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. That's somewhere. Today is what counts, man. And what we're doing today, man. And so, you got to go through, I ask myself some of the times that, why did I go through these things and what was the lesson? And if you really contemplate on it and you go back in your life, you can see how these things, good and bad, have led you to where you're supposed to be, which is right here and now.
Well, that was true, because you alluded to why I started at the mission, right? In that first year, and when I called you, there was no way, Sean, I could have ran the mission that God had put in my heart in 2007, because that's what he did. He put in my heart in 2007 what he wanted to do when I visited the LA Dream Center. So
how did you get connected to the mission? Because all I remember is it was very poorly managed. They were on the brink of being insolvent, and but how were you connected with them in the beginning? You were already doing work with it?
No, I was literally just feeding people under the bridge. And I heard that the mission was about to close its doors. So I went to go talk to the director of the mission at the time and avail myself to them. God told me, don't give them money, but give them all your time. So when I went and talked to him, and I would have probably been released by the Lord to give him money, but he was showing me what it was all about first, right? Yeah. So I went and said, hey, can we help you, Johnny and I, in any way? And so he said, no. I said, well, can we do chapels? Can we feed the people? He said, no, we're open 3 days a week. And I'm thinking, well, what do you do the rest of the time, right? Like,
right, they're not homeless the rest of the time.
I said, it's like, how do they eat? And so he's like, well, we got to pay for the electric. I said, well, what if I pay the electric bill for the day we come in and share in chapel? No, well, maybe. So he said, we'll let you do a chapel. So Johnny and I came to do a chapel, and this is before the transition happened. Sean, there was probably 30, 40 people in there. 10 people gave their life to the Lord. We put them in a van and bust them to rehabs outside of the city. Wow. And I said, God, if you give us a building, I mean, look at what could happen right here. Because this happened also, we did it across town. It was a place called the Ozanam Inn.
I remember
we did the same thing there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is blowing me away. Again, prophetically, it's like God. And then within, was 30 days, the mission didn't have enough money to stay open. They were going to close for the summer. Well, in that time, I was looking with the city to try to buy property. I was going to buy something and open a car wash and a landscaping business. And I was going to have drug addicts and people that are homeless work and start our own little ministry.
Gotcha.
So I asked the city, though, I want your property. I'm not going to pay for property. I want you to give it to me. They said, well, we don't have anything right now, but why don't you go talk to the mission because they're going to close. So I said, okay. So I went and sat down with the board of directors, and they said, what experience do you have? Like you, I said, well, in 2007, my business did $32 million in sales. I said, but what I can bring to you here is I love God, man. And he changed my life. Drugs, alcohol, women, every bit of it. I'm set free, and it was because of God. And everything he did for me, he'll do for these men and women. And so they said, you do it for free? I said, yes. They said, well, we got to pay you something. How about $1?
And that's where the dollar came from.
And I said, yes. My wife literally, though, Sean, thought I lost my mind.
I would imagine so.
She did. She was like, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't even,
right.
What does this look like? I don't know. It's like, you know, in business, you have a plan. You kind of know how you're going to attack it.
Sure.
I went to work that next day, and it was reality set in. Negative $3,000 in the bank, $30,000 in debt, $250,000 owed to, $30,000 in debt to the bank because they had a line of credit, and then they had all this money owed to their marketing people because they were trying to do all this stuff to raise money, and none of it was working. So I said, God, the building's falling apart. There's rats everywhere. I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah, no, I remember, dude. Yeah.
And literally, I said, God, what do you want me to do? And he said, love people. That's what I want you to do. Yeah. I know. But because I talk to God. Right? Give me practical steps. Like, A, do this. B, do this. Love people. It was it. Like, he gave me no other direction. So we did that. You know what blew my mind? So I 2 years after that, we finally had enough money to like go to a conference to see how these other missions were running around the United States, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Johnny and I go. We go to all these booths and talk to this one and this seminar, that, the seminar.
Yeah.
We sitting down at dinner. I said, bro, what'd you learn today? He said, we're doing everything that they're doing. I said, I know. God led us on a path we had no idea, and we were doing everything everybody else was doing, from marketing to ministry. It was like God just led us, and we didn't even see the things that God was showing us to do, but we implemented along the way. And it was like best policies and practices, and God's doing it.
Boy, you must have been sitting there saying.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Because that's where you sit back and you go, I don't care. My best laid plans couldn't get me to where I am today. The things that God's done, Sean, over the course of the past 10 years, if we talk about any of it, it's like I just can't even tell you. It's just meetings. I show up and he does this amazing thing, and it's like, what? I'm thinking I'm going for something, and he gives me something else. And that's been my life.
Keep showing up.
What you just said is what God told me. You just show up. Because, see, that's where a lot of people don't do what you just said is prophetic for somebody. They're sitting back waiting on God to do it. Yeah. And God's saying, I'm going to do it, but you show up. Moses showed up with Pharaoh, right? You show up, and God uses you.
And guess what? It's not just, it's pervasive across all of your life.
Everything. Every business.
Everything that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you take the mission over. It takes a couple of years to start making some money, and then, you've now grown this thing, I think, into one of the most successful missions in the country, I believe. And you guys are kind of leading the way, and now you're the industry leader and setting the trends and stuff. So I know there's been a lot of detail and innovation that's gone into what you guys are doing, and I think it would be fun to share. Number one, where are these people coming from? And how are they getting there, and how bad off are they when they get there, and what are some of the issues that you deal with?
It's amazing. So to say what you said. So right now, on any given night, we can have 400 people in all of our campuses. Whereas in the beginning, we could have 116, and we had one campus. So God gave us multiple campuses. And I think one of the first couple of impactful moments for me were the reality of the depth of pain. Because even what Sean, you and I did was only scratching the surface to the depth of where some of the people that we serve. I was there probably a month and a half, and I heard a woman chirping like a bird. She literally thought she was a bird. It's like kids now that are, they think they're something other than what God's created them to be, sure, right?
Yeah.
We talked to her like she was a person for 2 weeks. She left whole. It was just a matter of talking to her and sharing with her who she was and having a conversation with her and not placating to where she was in her deception in her mind. I've had other people that literally, Sean, 20 years in jail because they murdered their whole family, and literally sitting in our chapel and saying, "Hey, how did you get here?" And they said, "I got on a bus because I just got out of prison, and Arkansas said, don't come back." I said, "Well, what'd you do?" He said, "I killed my whole family." And God says, "Are you going to love him where he is?" And I'm like, in my mind, I'm saying, "God, yeah, but he could kill everybody in here." And he said, "If you just love him where he is and tell him the truth." Because his deal was, he said, I killed him to send him to God. I was doing him a favor. God told me, "No, you tell him you murdered him." These are the things that God does to set them free. You tell people the truth, and the truth sets them free. Woman sold by her mom and dad. I think I've shared this with you. 7 years old.
Yeah.
And this is over and over. Sold for drugs. And she's literally being abused in a motorcycle gang for almost 32 years. And then when they're done with her, they put her outside the meth house door, watching the door till it gets busted, and then she goes to jail. That's how she gets free. And she ends up in where you were in Austin, getting out of jail, and they put her on a bus, and she comes to New Orleans. And it's just the depth of the pain that these people have to come out of. It's wonder why when someone sees someone with a sign, Sean, and they're like, we'll work for food, and it's like you tell them, well, go get a job. They're not ready for a job, man.
Yeah.
They got to heal.
Yeah.
You know?
And so the people come into the program when you guys accept people, then there's a process, I guess, you take them through, getting them rehabilitated to become a productive person in society.
Yeah, and that's, for some, just like I just shared, is quick. But for the greater majority, it's over a year. Yeah. It's a massive process. Because many come in, they're taking 18 different medications. Like literally. And they're a zombie. They're so clouded in their mind that some don't even know who they are. We have to get them fingerprinted to determine even who their name is and then start to rebuild their life from there. I mean, that is the depth of hopelessness that we see. But what many people don't realize, and I don't say this like as to create like, wow, it's life or death. God's literally sending them to a place that, especially with fentanyl, and what these men and women are putting into their arms that can kill them in a minute. Yeah. I can't tell you how many people that we know that have left, and we end up doing their funerals because the family asks us to, because they died, and we're like the last place they came. It's just a reality of where we are. But I think that when we look at that depravity and the lowness, to see, like you said, you can get stuck there.
Yeah.
But to see God brings hundreds out of it every year, hundreds of people getting free, it just makes you, that we get to see the miracle. Because you'd be like Jeremiah and just tell the truth for 40 years and not see one. So I can't even imagine that. Right. The fruit that we get to see in our ministries, where people's like come in one way and you see them, like this picture I brought for you. See that woman?
Yep. Look
at that. She came in to die. That's her story.
Wow.
This is her today. She now is my volunteer coordinator. That's just again, the depth, but we get to see the miracles, right? And because we're miracles too, right?
Big
again.
Time. So you can recognize one when you are one.
Yes. And that is even more apparent.
I don't think I've ever been to one of your functions, because typically some of these people that have made it out the other side get up and tell their stories, man. I don't think I've ever left without you just weep in joy and hope and sadness and all. It's like all these emotions, because it's like, man, you're connected to like that story they just told, but you can see that they're free now. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing.
Only God.
Only God. Yeah. So how many people, I know that, you guys have a certain amount of people that run through your facilities a year. Typically it's headquartered in New Orleans. You're right downtown. Yep. So that's where the initial touch usually is. And then,
that's about 3,000.
3,000 a year.
Yes. Wow. A year. And then so another about 700 of those will get through at some portion of our program, whether they stay the full 1 year or they say, hey, I'm going to, stay for 60 days, whatever that looks like. And they're getting physically healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, and intellectually healthy. And what I mean by that is like intellectual, you need your GED, you get literacy, you get financial literacy, all that. Vocations, you get to start all that. Spiritual is the obvious. For us, it's Jesus, setting a person free. The physical is I got doctors and that come with Tulane now, and we have ophthalmology clinic, and we have podiatry, we have dermatology, it's just like all the basic things that you and I take for granted. We could just go to, we have all that's right there at the mission.
So when someone comes in, you evaluate them. If they need any medical help with your staff, you try to get that fixed and corrected or going in the right direction. And then, they branch off into either one of your programs or...
because you can't even take the spiritual step if your body's falling apart, right?
Exactly.
Like we're going to do both at the same time, but if you've got, diabetes that you're not taking care of and you might lose a limb, we got to start addressing these issues that you've been pushing to the side because you haven't felt much because you've been just taking so much drugs,
Yeah, it's truly the least of our brothers.
Yes.
That you're working with. So from a psychological and just mental and emotional standpoint, man, the ups and downs have to be just crazy as you're in the middle of it. But I guess you see the end maybe when you're looking at somebody.
Well, it's two things. I think that in the beginning I used to, what you just said, I would get so caught up in the ones that say no.
Yeah.
And then I realized that that's actually pride.
Gotcha.
Because it was me thinking that what we would do actually was making the difference. That's Satan's tricky, because good work, you want to take credit for it.
That's right.
God would say, I'm the only one that has power to change anyone. So the only thing that you can do is be a vessel for the truth and love them, what we just said. Anything outside of that, Dave, you want to take credit for. And that's a battle. It's a wrestling match, man. Yeah. It's from now till I die. That's going to be the truth.
Sure. Because yeah, it's just human nature, man, to go there. That's a good lesson, man, for people that hard chargers and high achievers and people that go out there and grab it, to constantly check yourself in the mirror, is that, hey, man, like you're the one that's the world sees as doing it, but don't ever forget who's the one that's really
we right now have businesses, Sean, our vocational businesses. So we, you've heard some of it, like we wash cars, we cut grass, but now we do massive renovation projects. I mean, like gorgeous work. The men in the program are doing this. We have our event planning wedding facility. I think you might have went to a wedding there.
Right? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, man.
And so the women oversee that. All of our businesses bring in over $1.5 million in revenue.
Wow.
And so we pay a good portion of that back out to them. So it's, again, businessmen like us, we can look at that and say, boy, what a great thing.
Yeah.
And it's God saying, listen, all I got to do is take my hand off of it. And so that's the reality, even in that, is even in the business things that we are gifted in, because God definitely gives us gifts.
There's no doubt.
And we're not apologizing for that. Yeah. We're grateful for it. But we also recognize that it's God that gave even the gift to be able to do that.
Dude, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. And I think the stories I've heard, there's got to be hundreds of stories.
A year. So 10 years been thousands.
Yeah. So from the business side of things, because I know you have the grass cutting, you have the car wash, and then
media,
the construction. Now you guys
video, cinematography, photography.
Wow. Vocational
training with the sheetrock, plumbing, electrical. I mean, everything, Sean. There's nothing we don't do.
Well, people listening today, what besides giving money?
Yep.
What are some other opportunities that that how else can they get involved?
So, of course, NewOrleansMission.org, if they want to even volunteer, they could go on there and volunteer. They can give on that page, but they could also hire the men, so this is, or women, hire services. You want the grass cut? We cut grass. Maybe you got clothes to donate. We'll pick it up, Yeah. So all those things, and it's not like Volunteers of America where they're just going to take it and sell it. Anything that you give is going to be given away. So like if you give clothing, it's going to go on somebody's back. You give a car, it's not getting sold. It's given to somebody to drive. Wow. Unless it's a junker and we can't drive it, we sell it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if it's a drivable car, somebody in the program's getting it because there's a need for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the uniqueness too of how people can get involved with us. And even just like you all got to do. Yeah. You sponsored a house at the women's place.
Right.
But it's like, so often we think we got to do something overseas. You see it here. There's so much need right here. And even that house, it can see 12 women at a time. So there's so many opportunities, whether you're living on the North Shore and you want to get involved, or Hammond, you want to get involved. We have the women's facility. So all those campuses, people can get involved.
Yeah, no, That's so when you look at you guys now are very established, and I know that you're always looking towards the future. Like where do you see this going? What's the big the big goals? You guys have you have such a great foundation now, a great staff. You have a good process. You've been doing this for a while, and so where does this ultimately take you, my brother?
Well, this is what God's done. I mean, I don't even know, because I feel like you and I keep in touch, but it's been a little bit since we talked.
Yep.
And literally, I had 2 meetings in the past 8 months, and God gave us 2 brand new facilities in Florida. So he gave us 40 acres for women with children in Florida, Crestview. And I went to a meeting, and this is how God works, to talk to a donor about donating buildings for that property, because he does what Warren Davey does. He moves buildings around.
Okay.
So Warren knew the guy. And he said, Warren, I can't believe you're calling me right now. He said, I just bought a middle school, an entire middle school in Marianna, Florida. And he said, I was in a meeting with my pastor this morning, and I wanted to use it for a men's retreat center. My pastor told me they can't afford it. Bring that guy to me. So I drove out to Marianna, toward Marianna Middle School. It's amazing. 35 acres, 80,000 square feet in buildings. And it's like North Lake Christian, because that's where my kids go.
Right.
But it's nicer.
Jesus.
It's got everything. So God gave us this. It's a place where up to 300 men are going to be able to live. So to your question, is like really timely.
Yeah.
I can see clearly what God is saying is it's time to take what you've done and multiply it. I had an offer on a property. A guy wanted to give me 52 acres in Mississippi. That's a shelter for animals. And we're navigating even that and saying, like, I don't know everything that God has, but what I'm seeing is just miracles, because it's like I said in the beginning, the onset is literally right now, Sean, I'm in this place where I show up for a meeting and I don't even know. I have a plan of how I want that meeting to go, and it explodes to a completely different meeting.
Almost every time.
Almost every time. I think I'm going for coffee and somebody wants to donate. We're going to have 7 buildings for women with children at Lynn Haven. It's the expansion and the growth it reminds me of when we had our businesses. When God explodes it, it's like you sit back and you're amazed and you're like, okay, God, don't tell anybody, but I don't really know even what I'm doing.
Exactly.
It's staying low in that place this time, because I can tell you I didn't stay low in 2007, and God had to crush the pride out of me. So it's staying there this time and saying, okay, God, I don't want to make the same mistake. It's not about the buildings. It's about the people. Help me to remember that, because you see all the miracles and you're like, you can almost become expecting of it and overlook it. It's like, hey, God, help me to stay being blown away by what you're doing.
So the expectation is that if you show up, he's going to show up.
That's it.
It's proven itself over
and over, man.
And over and over again. So when do those facilities come on soon? Like when do they?
So the men's campus is open in January 14th.
Wow.
When I got in front of city council, they helped us run some water lines from the fire hydrant. They were 100% behind the project, because you never know. When you're bringing this to a community, how will the community receive it? Well, that city is much like our Bogalusa. It's been ravaged with drugs, and it took what was good and just brought it to the pit. So they know they need it. So they were like, we welcome this in our community. So then we'll be open in that January 15th. And then the campus in Crestview, it's just raw land. Sean. So it's a massive building project that I have about $1.1 million committed to. We're going to initially start. It's about a $2.5 million project. So we have our work cut out for us on that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It reminds me of New Orleans Mission, though. I mean, when I looked at it, Sean, I walked in, it was a dump. And to think, how are we going to renovate it? We get a budget of $6.6 million. That's how it was going to cost. It ended up costing us $8.1 to renovate it because we had to do it over time.
Yep.
And I don't even know to this day. I got some chunks from here and there, about $3 million, but the other $5, I'm like,
where'd this come from?
It literally just came from a hodgepodge of people. Like, it wasn't like God would allow me to give any one person credit for what took place. It was like, I look back, I'm like, where did $8.1 million come from? You know?
That's amazing, man.
It is. It's been amazing.
Yeah, so we're just coming out of COVID right now, and I'm always interested to see how these last few crazy years have affected different. Have you know, what did you see on the ground?
Destruction.
And so did the demographic, did the type of person, the problems, did any of those things change? Or
so to answer your question, the demographic has been changing. When I got to the New Orleans Mission, it was 70% African American, 30% white, 29% white, and like 1% other. Uh-huh. Today it's 50-50. Just what it is, 50-50. And we're seeing more Hispanic, obviously, over the course of the past year. But this is the bigger issue that I don't think that the world sees. So my pantry has been seeing, we have a pantry at the Giving Hope Retreat. It served about 800 families before COVID. It now serves over 1,000 families a month. And these are families, Sean, they never needed food before.
Right.
Because they're working, but they just don't have enough to pay for extra fuel, extra electric. So
extra groceries.
Yes. So they're coming to the pantry. Then in New Orleans, what's taken place is the city shut down on those people. And so if you had an addiction, before you were working in a hotel, restaurant industry, because it was like the car business, man.
Yeah.
It's a very heavy, party.
Service industry night, sin night.
Totally. We used to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been there. So they worked and partied hard, right? But the job at least kept them having to go to work. Then the government said, hey, we're going to give you this money and you don't have to go to work. So they stepped into a full-blown addiction where they didn't have to wake up. So guess what happened? The money stopped. Homelessness is skyrocketing. Addiction's completely out of control. And what are we seeing? It's a perfect storm. It's why, I don't know if you remember, we had Carnival offer us a cruise ship.
Yep.
And I said, we need this for what's coming. It had 3,000 rooms on it. The city said, we won't give you a place to park it.
I remember that because I was trying to help you get it placed somewhere along the river where you could accommodate them.
They would not. And so now, here we are, knee-jerk reaction. The community's flailing. They're frustrated. All these people, because there's not even enough bed space. God showed me what was going to happen a long time ago. But everything is so reactionary with government.
Yeah.
It's like we fix the problem as we go. Don't deal with it, what could be coming. We get to see what's coming.
Yep.
And that's why God gave us all these other facilities, because of what's coming. So I am seeing, great question, firsthand, the destruction of the policies that were laid out.
I think we just got named the murder capital of the United States.
We did.
Yeah, and I know when I'll go downtown sometimes, I'll get off the interstate, and I never saw, coming towards you guys, man, the tents, and they've taken over a lot of the intersections. And
it's terrible.
Yeah, man, it's horrible, dude. And you can tell a lot of the people are just totally whacked out of their mind because they'll wander in the streets. They're just, kind of. So COVID had a dramatic,
massive impact.
So how are those people just out there on the streets just? Because you can only accommodate what you can accommodate.
Well, this is the thing. So we stay consistent with going to meet them where they are and sharing the hope that's available for them for change. And it's just like anything. When they are ready, they can come find us.
They know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're prepared for the numbers as they continue to increase with these other facilities. So, it's because again, you can get discouraged, right? You could go see that and be like, well, gosh, the problem's too big. Well, it is massive. And the answer is only going to be found in Jesus Christ. That's why you're never going to end homelessness. It's a lie. It's the way that they tell people that, hey, we could fix this problem. You can't fix the problem until every single person would know Jesus. Then you could fix the problem, because then homelessness isn't a problem. Because we're all taking care of each other.
Exactly.
And that's the way God designed it. Well, until that happens, we're going to have a homeless problem. And my job is to help them one person at a time. It's just like Jesus said, the guys, the walking, one's the rich, the Pharisee, and the other is the Good Samaritan. And there's a busted up, broken guy on the ground. And the Good Samaritan picks him up, puts him in the inn, says, here's a couple bucks. I'll come back if there's any more you need, but bandage him up and take care of him.
That's right.
We're the inn. Drop him off at the mission. We bandage him up. Don't give him money. Give it to the inn. They're going to take care of the physical needs, and you come back later. A lot of people are just walking past them. And so that's how we view ourselves.
And it's heavy, dude. It's heavy, man. Well, brother, listen, I know, yeah, you inspire me, man, just seeing all the things that you're doing. And I know the spirit and the way that you approach this, man, that, you're doing some really great things, man, and you've stepped up as a leader in our community. You're out there fighting a good fight. You understand the world that we live in. You see all the angles because God's showing you that, and you're continuing to thrive and make such a difference, man. I've seen it firsthand. And so, dude, listen, my hat's off to you. We're always here for you, and yeah, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure kind of getting is there anything else that you want to kind of touch on with people? Maybe the event that's coming up, or
we'll tell them we do have an event November 18th. Hopefully you and your wife can come. It's our gala. It's our 10th annual one. It's at the Hyatt. Mm-hmm. And if you love good music, Danny Gokey is our artist for the evening. Yep. And it's from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock on a Friday night. So great time to support us, and it's a lot of fun. Free food, free drinks, great auction items. So that, but I also want to tell you, thank you for how you have supported the work, especially through your businesses and personally over the years, and making a difference, because it does make a difference. Like, you can't do this without money. Yeah. We don't take federal dollars. We take no money from the government to do what we do. So it's individuals like you, corporate sponsors, and foundations that are making this work happen. So thank you for that. Yeah, you got it, man. We'll always be in your corner. And listen, man, I encourage everyone to go to themission.org, right? Themission.org. You can get involved a variety of different ways. Man, you can see the excellence in the organization. You feel good about giving. You see the people that they've healed. Go take a look at some of the stories. Go just go give it a good look. We need these are the type of organizations that everybody needs to be involved in contributing to, either their time, their talent, their treasure. Listen, however you can jump in and help, there's a place that David and the mission could use this, man. So listen, I'm glad that we got to sit down and talk, and so people can understand the impact that you're having, your heart that you have. And man, it's really interesting that God has showed you. You built the model here over 10 years, and now you understand the model, and now you're starting to grow. And man, I'm so excited about what the future holds, my brother. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. That they can follow along with you guys on what you're doing on social media? Yeah, so also you can look at us, NewOrleansMission.org, yep. And then also New Orleans Mission Facebook page, Lynn Haven Facebook page, and Giving Hope Retreat Facebook page. Any other social medias? All of them. So we're on Instagram, Twitter. All under the mission? All under the New Orleans Mission. The New Orleans Mission. So go follow them on the socials. You'll stay up to date on all the events that are happening. They have raffles. They have, every year they raffle a house off. I know because we help out with some of the SMS messaging,
And so, yeah, man, it's exciting. You got a mover and a shaker that's out here doing the work of being the hands and feet of Jesus, man. And I love you, my brother, dude.
Love you too.
Keep
Thank you.
up the great work, brother.
Thank you, brother.